I was a software developer in Seattle working for one of those tech firms everyone wants to join. For 7 years, Stephanie and I built what I thought was the perfect marriage. We had our dream home, yearly vacations, and plans for the future. At least that was my perception. The reality hit me when I planned a special evening to rekindle our connection. After cooking her favorite meal, I reached for her hand across our dining table. That is when she said those words, "Not tonight." Or any night. Before I tell you how I turned my marriage crisis into the best thing that ever happened to me, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever felt taken for granted. My story started in Portland, where I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood with parents who worked hard to provide for our family. Dad was a civil engineer, Mom taught at the local elementary school. They taught me the value of dedication and hard work, lessons I carried into adulthood. After getting my computer science degree from Oregon State, I landed a job at a rising tech company in Seattle, excited about the future and the possibilities ahead. I met Stephanie during my second year in Seattle at a 4th of July barbecue. Our mutual friend Taylor had invited both of us, insisting we would hit it off. The weather was perfect that day. Blue skies, 78 degrees, with Mount Rainier visible in the distance. Stephanie walked in wearing a white sundress, her dark hair pulled back with this confidence that immediately caught my attention. When she laughed, her entire face lit up. We spent that entire afternoon talking about everything from our favorite hiking trails to our shared love of Anthony Bourdain shows. Our connection was immediate. I asked for her number before the fireworks even started, and we had our first date 3 days later. Those early days were magical, exploring Pike Place Market on Saturday mornings, finding hidden coffee shops, and staying up until 2 in the morning talking about our dreams. Stephanie worked in marketing, climbing the ranks quickly at a major retail company. She was ambitious, smart, and determined, all qualities that I admired deeply. After 18 months of dating, I proposed during a weekend trip to San Juan Islands. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink as I got down on one knee on the beach. Her yes was immediate, and the joy in her eyes is something I will never forget. We were married 6 months later at a lakeside venue just outside Seattle. It was a small ceremony with 50 of our closest friends and family. My brother was my best man, and her college roommate was her maid of honor. We wrote our own vows, promising to support each other, grow together, and never take our love for granted. The first 2 years of marriage were everything I had hoped for. We purchased our first home together, a craftsman with a small yard in a neighborhood we both loved. We established weekend traditions, farmers markets on Saturdays, hiking or visiting friends on Sundays. We talked about our future, plans to start a family in a few years, dream vacations to Japan and New Zealand, career goals we both wanted to achieve. I was happy to work extra hours to help build the life we wanted. My company offered stock options and bonuses for completed projects, and I took advantage of every opportunity. I prided myself on being a thoughtful husband. I remembered important dates, brought home her favorite flowers when she had a tough day at work, and planned surprise weekend getaways when she was stressed. For our second anniversary, I arranged a private cooking class with a chef from her favorite restaurant. Her smile that night made all the planning worthwhile. The first signs of change were subtle. Stephanie started staying later at the office. Our Saturday morning market trips became less frequent as she begged off, citing work deadlines. When we did spend time together, her phone was always in hand, constantly checking emails. I noticed her growing distant, but I assumed it was work stress. Her company was expanding rapidly, and she had been given increasing responsibilities. Instead of addressing these concerns directly, I doubled down on my efforts. I started cooking more elaborate meals, researching recipes I thought would impress her. I planned a surprise weekend to Napa Valley, making reservations at exclusive wineries months in advance. I bought her a necklace she had admired in a store window downtown. With each gesture, I hoped to rekindle what we had lost, but her responses grew increasingly lukewarm. "You did not have to go to all this trouble," she would say, a phrase that stung more than she realized. Despite the growing tension, I kept trying. I believed that if I just worked harder at our relationship, things would improve. I was raised to believe that marriage requires effort and commitment. Giving up was not an option I was willing to consider. Looking back, I realized I was ignoring the warning signs, too afraid to acknowledge the growing distance between us. Our 7th anniversary fell on a Tuesday. I took the day off work to prepare something special, despite knowing Stephanie would still be working. I spent the morning at Pike Place Market selecting the perfect ingredients: fresh salmon from her favorite fishmonger heirloom tomatoes for the salad, and a bottle of the Oregon Pinot Noir we had discovered on our honeymoon. I wanted everything to be perfect. I spent hours in the kitchen preparing her favorite dishes exactly as she liked them. I set the dining table with our wedding china, which had been sitting unused in a cabinet for years. Candles were arranged around the room, soft jazz playing in the background, the same playlist from our wedding reception. I even wore the blue shirt she had once said brought out my eyes. Stephanie texted that she would be home by 7:30. By 8:15, the candles had burned halfway down, and the food was growing cold. She finally arrived at 8:45, apologizing about a client emergency as she set her laptop bag on the counter. Her eyes took in the elaborate setup, and for a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of the old warmth. But then she checked her buzzing phone and the moment vanished. "You did not have to do all this, Russell," she said, the same phrase that had become her standard response to my efforts. She picked at her food, complimenting the taste, but eating little. Throughout dinner, her phone kept lighting up with notifications, and her attention remained divided. I tried to engage her about memories from our early days, but her responses were brief, her mind clearly elsewhere. After dinner, I poured us each a glass of wine and moved closer to her on the couch. When I leaned in to kiss her, she turned her face slightly so my lips landed on her cheek. When I tried again, gently touching her arm, she stiffened and pulled away. "Not tonight, Russell," she said, her voice flat and distant. Then after a pause that felt like forever, she added, "Or any night. I cannot do this anymore." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there stunned into silence as she continued. "I have been trying to figure out how to say this for months. I think we want different things. I feel suffocated by your expectations." That night I slept in our guest room staring at the ceiling until dawn broke. The next morning we moved around each other like strangers sharing a temporary space. She left for work early, her goodbye, a mechanical formality. I called in sick, unable to focus on code when my personal life had just crashed like a failed program. In the days that followed, I replayed our relationship in my mind, searching for the moment things began to change. Had I missed something obvious? Had I been so focused on what I thought was right that I failed to see what was actually happening? I tried to initiate conversations about our relationship, but Stephanie deflected or claimed exhaustion. "I cannot deal with this right now," became her mantra. 2 weeks after our anniversary, I discovered the first concrete evidence that something was seriously wrong. While doing laundry, I found a receipt in her jacket pocket for a dinner at an expensive downtown restaurant, a dinner I knew nothing about. The date was a night she had told me she was working late. When I casually mentioned finding it, asking if it had been a work event, her defensive reaction told me everything. "Are you checking up on me now?" "Seriously," she snapped. "It was a business dinner. Not everything in my life revolves around you, Russell." The pattern continued. Unexplained absences, defensive responses to innocent questions, password changes on her phone. The emotional toll became increasingly difficult to bear. I lost 15 pounds. In a month, my appetite vanishing along with my marriage. Colleagues noticed my distraction. My manager pulled me aside to ask if everything was all right. I deflected with vague references to personal issues I was handling. Finally, after a particularly distant weekend where we barely exchanged 10 words, I directly asked the question that had been haunting me. "Are you having an affair?" Her reaction was explosive, anger rather than denial. "Is that what you think of me? That I would cheat? Maybe the problem is you always assume the worst. Did you ever consider that maybe I am just suffocating in this relationship?" That night I sat in my car in the grocery store parking lot and broke down. The tears came without warning, years of suppressed emotions finally breaking through. I felt like a failure. As a husband, as a man, as a person. My entire identity had become wrapped up in being Stephanie's husband, in making her happy. Without that, who was I? In my desperation, I drove to Jake's place, my friend, since college days. Jake had always been brutally honest, sometimes painfully so, but I needed that now more than comfort. I sat at his kitchen table, spilling everything while he listened without interruption. When I finished, I expected sympathy. Instead, he gave me something far more valuable: perspective. Russ, I have watched you bend over backward for years, trying to make Stephanie happy, he said, pouring us each a bourbon. When was the last time she did anything to make you happy? Relationships are not supposed to be one person constantly giving while the other takes. That is not love, man. That is servitude. His words hit me hard. I had been so focused on what I might have done wrong that I never considered the fundamental imbalance in our relationship. The bourbon burned my throat as I swallowed it along with this new reality. The 20-minute drive home from Jake's apartment became a pivotal moment in my life. As rain pelted my windshield and Seattle's city lights blurred through my tears, a startling clarity emerged through my emotional fog. I could not change Stephanie or her feelings. The only person I could change was myself. For years, I had invested all my energy, time, and resources into winning her approval and affection. What if I redirected all that toward myself instead? The thought was both terrifying and liberating. By the time I pulled into our driveway, a decision had crystallized. I would stop chasing Stephanie's validation and start rebuilding my sense of self-worth. That night, I created what I later called my redirection plan, a detailed roadmap for personal development. I broke it down into 3 categories: physical health, career advancement, and social connections. Instead of pouring all my energy into a one-sided marriage, I would invest in myself. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to a gym 5 miles from our house. I had never been particularly athletic, preferring coding marathons to actual marathons. The facility was intimidating, fit people seemingly knowing exactly what they were doing while I stood awkwardly by the entrance. Brian, a trainer with a friendly smile and patient demeanor, noticed my discomfort and approached me. First time he asked without judgment. "That obvious, huh?" I admitted. "Everyone starts somewhere," he replied, offering to show me around. By the end of that first session, I had a basic workout plan and a standing appointment 3 times a week. At work, I set new boundaries. For years, I had been the guy saying yes to every project, working nights and weekends to impress both my bosses and Stephanie. I started leaving at 5:30 sharp, using my evenings for my new priorities. I enrolled in advanced coding courses, focusing on machine learning, an area that had always interested me but that I had never had time to explore. Financial independence became another priority. Stephanie and I had always maintained joint accounts, with my higher salary funding most of our lifestyle. I opened a separate account, what I dubbed my redirection fund, and began allocating a portion of each paycheck to it. This was not about hiding money, but about establishing independence. Stephanie noticed the changes almost immediately. The first morning I left for the gym, instead of making her breakfast, she looked genuinely confused. "Where are you going so early?" she asked. Her coffee cup paused midway to her lips. "Gym," I replied simply. "I have got a training session at 6. "Since when do you go to the gym?" Her tone mixed disbelief with something else, concern perhaps that I was moving beyond her sphere of influence. "Since today," I answered and headed out the door. Similar scenes played out as other aspects of my life changed. When I declined a dinner with her colleagues to attend a coding workshop, her surprise was palpable. When she discovered I had purchased new clothes without consulting her, she made snippy comments about sudden midlife crises. I remained calm, neither defensive nor apologetic. My physical transformation began slowly, but steadily. Morning runs, weightlifting sessions with Brian, and a complete overhaul of my diet led to noticeable changes. I dropped 30 pounds over 4 months, replaced my wardrobe with clothes that actually fit, and got a new haircut at an upscale barbershop downtown. Colleagues commented on the change, and for the first time in years, I felt confident in my own skin. Professionally, I volunteered for a high-profile project involving AI integration that many on my team had avoided due to its complexity and tight deadline. Nights I had once spent trying to please Stephanie were now invested in expanding my skills. The project was challenging, demanding creative problem-solving and innovation. When we delivered ahead of schedule, our director personally commended my contributions. My social world expanded as well. I reconnected with old friends who had drifted away during my marriage. Jake and I resumed our weekly basketball games. I joined a hiking group that explored trails around the Pacific Northwest every other weekend. The first time I stood on a summit, overlooking Puget Sound with my new friends, breathing in crisp mountain air, I felt a freedom I had forgotten existed. As I became less available and less predictable, Stephanie's attitude toward me began to shift. She started texting during the day to ask about my plans. When I mentioned a weekend hiking trip, she suddenly suggested we should spend time together instead. When I politely declined, explaining I had already committed to the group, her response was telling. "You never used to have plans that did not include me," she said, a note of accusation in her voice. "Things change," I replied simply. The most surprising moment came 3 months into my transformation. I had been selected to present our AI project at a company-wide tech showcase. I had mentioned it casually to Stephanie, not expecting her to attend. Yet as I stood on stage explaining our work to a packed auditorium, I spotted her in the back row. Her presence threw me momentarily, but I recovered and delivered my presentation confidently. Afterward, she approached me as colleagues were offering congratulations. "You were really good up there," she said with what seemed like genuine admiration. "I had no idea you were working on something this important." "There are a lot of things you do not know about me anymore," I responded, not unkindly but truthfully. Later that night, as I was reading in the home office I had reclaimed as my space, she confronted me directly for the first time. "What is going on with you, Russell? Are you having an affair? Is this some kind of payback?" I set my book down and looked at her steadily. "No, Stephanie, I am not having an affair. I am just no longer directing all my time, attention, and resources towards someone who declared not tonight or any night. I have redirected them toward myself instead." Her composure cracked, then tears welling in her eyes. "I do not know who you are anymore." "I am becoming the person I set aside to try to make you happy," I said, "and I am discovering I actually like him." She broke down, then admitting she had been lost in her own ambitions and insecurities, taking me for granted, because I had always been so dependable, so eager to please. It was the most honest conversation we had had in years. "Do you want a divorce?" she asked, finally, her voice small. "I do not know what I want yet," I answered truthfully. "I need time to figure that out. For the first time in our marriage, I am putting my needs first while I decide." After our confrontation, I needed space for serious reflection. I booked a weekend at a small cabin near Mount Baker, a 3-hour drive from Seattle. The solitude was exactly what I needed. Just me, the mountains, and the questions I had been avoiding for so long. The cabin was rustic but comfortable, with large windows overlooking a meadow where deer grazed at dawn. I spent hours sitting on the porch, watching the light change over the mountains, asking myself what I truly wanted. Not what I thought I should want, not what would make others happy, but what would fulfill me. Did I still love Stephanie? Yes, but not in the desperate approval-seeking way I had before. Was our marriage worth saving? That was harder to answer. We had history, shared memories, and once shared dreams. But a relationship requires two people equally invested in its success. I was no longer willing to be the only one putting in the effort. By Sunday afternoon, I had reached a decision. I would approach our situation with honesty rather than emotion, setting clear expectations and boundaries. If there was a path forward for us, it would have to be on entirely new terms. When I returned to Seattle, I texted Stephanie asking to meet at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop in a neighborhood neither of us frequented. She agreed immediately, perhaps sensing the importance of the conversation. She arrived looking both nervous and hopeful, more vulnerable than I had seen her in years. We ordered our drinks and found a corner table away from other patrons. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," I began. "About us, about what went wrong, and about what I want for my future." And she asked, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "I think we both contributed to where we are now," I said. "You withdrew emotionally and took me for granted. I responded by trying even harder to please you, falling into patterns that were not healthy for either of us. I became codependent, building my entire identity around being your husband, rather than being my own person." She nodded slowly. "I know I hurt you, Russell. I got so caught up in my career and proving myself that I started seeing your love as, I do not know, something that would always be there no matter what. I stopped appreciating it, stopped appreciating you. I propose we take 6 months of separation," I continued. "Not legally, but living apart. During that time, we both commit to individual therapy. We can check in monthly to see where we stand, but no pressure for either of us to make permanent decisions yet." She agreed, surprising me with her willingness to respect my terms. We worked out practical details. She would stay with her sister temporarily while looking for a short-term rental. We would maintain minimal contact except for our monthly check-ins and practical matters regarding our shared finances and home. During those 6 months, I continued my journey of self-discovery and growth. My career flourished. The success of the AI project led to a promotion and the opportunity to build my own team. I completed my first full marathon, a goal that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. My friendships deepened, particularly with Jake and with Lisa and Mark from my hiking group. I explored interests I had never made time for before. I took guitar lessons, learning to play songs I had always loved. Weekend photography hikes became my meditation, capturing mountain vistas and urban scenes alike through my lens. I joined a cooking class, discovering I genuinely enjoyed creating meals for my own pleasure, not just to impress someone else. Therapy provided insights I had never considered. My therapist, Dr. Adams, helped me understand how my childhood had shaped my people-pleasing tendencies. My parents' marriage, though loving, had featured my father constantly trying to earn my mother's approval. I had unconsciously replicated that pattern, believing love meant constantly proving my worth through service and sacrifice. Meanwhile, Stephanie was on her own parallel journey. During our monthly coffee meetings, I saw gradual changes in her perspective. She had taken a step back at work, declining a promotion that would have required even more of her time. She had reconnected with old friends and rediscovered her passion for painting, something she had abandoned early in her career. Her therapy was helping her understand her own fears of vulnerability and her tendency to push away those who got too close. 3 months into our separation, our check-in conversations began to shift from practical matters to more personal topics. She asked about my marathon training. I inquired about her painting. We shared insights from therapy without expectation or judgment. For perhaps the first time, we were truly listening to each other. At the 5-month mark, Stephanie asked the question that would determine our future. "Russell, do you think? Would you consider trying again? Maybe we could start dating. Get to know who we are now." I did not answer immediately. I had promised myself I would not make decisions based on emotion or obligation. "I am not the same person I was," I said finally. "I cannot go back to who I was before, and I will not compromise the growth I have experienced." "I do not want you to," she said earnestly. "I like who you have become. I respect him, and I hope you might like who I am becoming too." We agreed to a first date the following weekend. We met at a new restaurant downtown, both dressed up and surprisingly nervous. The conversation flowed more easily than I had expected, punctuated by genuine laughter and moments of comfortable silence. We discussed books we had read, experiences from our time apart, and dreams that had evolved. We carefully avoided making promises or plans beyond the evening. Walking her to her car afterward, I realized something profound. Regardless of whether our marriage survived, I was now living authentically. My happiness no longer depended on her validation or approval. That understanding was liberating. Over the following weeks, we continued dating while maintaining our separate living arrangements. We took things slowly, rebuilding trust through consistent actions rather than grand gestures or promises. After 2 months of dating, we discussed the possibility of her moving back home. I was clear about my boundaries. I would keep my home office as my personal space, maintain my friendships and activities, and expect equal effort in our relationship. 6 months after that first date, Stephanie moved back in. Our marriage today looks nothing like it did before. We have date nights, but also maintain our individual interests. We communicate directly rather than making assumptions. We both contribute to household tasks and decisions. Most importantly, we recognize that healthy love requires two whole people choosing each other daily, not one person desperately trying to earn the other's affection. The greatest lesson I learned, through redirecting my time, attention, and resources, was that self-respect must come before seeking respect from others. Ironically, by stopping my pursuit of Stephanie's approval and focusing on becoming someone I respected, I became someone she respected too. But even if our reconciliation had not happened, I would still count my journey as a success. Today, as I write this from the home office I designed during our separation, I reflect on the paradox that saving myself was necessary before our relationship could be saved. True connection, I have learned, requires healthy separation, the ability to stand firmly in your own identity while choosing to share your life with another. The greatest gift we can give those we love is not endless sacrifice or service, but rather our authentic selves, whole, healthy, and secure in our own worth. Have you ever had to redirect your energy away from someone who did not appreciate it? Comment below and let me know how that worked out for you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about personal growth and transformation. Share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and others, is to redirect your precious resources toward your own growth.